Hey everybody, welcome to episode 29. Today's video I'm going to talk about one pretty quintessential thing for me in comic books back in the 80s, and that's specifically the Longshot limited series. It was a 6-issue limited series, started in 85. And I believe it's finished up in 86. I'm not 100% sure. We'll check that when we get to the 6th issue. But so with this one, this is the graphic novel or the collected version of it. I had this exact same one back in 89. I think I got it. When did this one copyright? It's hard to tell. Well, it says 85, but I don't think they had a collected work in 85. It says 86 and 89. I think this was the 1989 copy, because like I said, up until the late 80s, they really weren't putting out a lot of these. The trade paperbacks were not really a thing. They had them here and there. They made a big deal about the graphic novel, and they had a whole series of Marvel graphic novels. So to get anything in a trade paperback, or it would collect a few issues, specifically like a six-issue limited series, or even a 4-issue limited series, which are kind of hard to come by. One I'm still kind of looking after that I had as a kid is I'd like to get the Wolverine, one from Claremont and Frank Miller. I'd like to find that one. I've seen it a little high. I'm just trying to look for a little bit more reasonable price. I'm not sure what happened to my original one of this, but I picked this one up about 10 years ago. For about $15-ish. I think it $16.95 on a cover, 1989. So, it pretty much the same price. I try not to pay a lot of money for these. I mean, when you see these collected works go up, I know some of them are sought after, and they become collector's items in and to themselves over the issues. But I wouldn't pay a lot for them. I really wouldn't even pay a lot for the comics. Like I said, to have the comics again would be nice, and I've had them I think twice now, 3 times now. No, twice. I had my original 6, and I'll tell you how I got those. And then I bought them all again about 15 years ago, and ended up selling them in my big purge about 5 or 6, 7 years ago ish. Where I pretty much got rid of half my comic book collection. I just needed the money. It was, a rough patch in my life, so I needed the money, and it was the easiest thing to make some quick cash on the side selling on eBay, so I kind of did that. That was one of the ones, and that's kind of why I sold it. So it's like, well, I've got this, and so it's nice to have this. Same thing with like my Inferno, my Fall of the Mutants, all that stuff. It's just like, it was nice to have the comics, but I've got readable copies of them in print, so if we lose power or it's a zombie apocalypse, I can still read my comics. Otherwise I've got the CBRs and whatnot on the computer. And I'll go through this. I'll show you this one, but I'm going to go through the CBR. Yeah, it's just easier to show you everything. Storming out, so if you see a big flash, it's just lightning, or if you hear some crashing, you might even hear the water hitting the eaves trough as it keeps coming down, which is probably annoying you as much as it's annoying me, but it is what it is. So yeah, here's, it's pretty much collected all of it here. And again, I'll tell you about the back cover, why this is significant to me. And there's another reason why, and you might know what it is right off the bat just by looking at it, but it's a significant back cover to me. Again, all the art was done by Arthur Adams, and this was pretty much his freshman attempt. This was what he basically broke into comic books with Marvel, was this. And I've heard some Jim Shooter. I read an interview with Ann Nesenti, who wrote this, who was an editor at the time at Marvel. And she talked about Arthur Adams in this. I heard interviews, on video from people interviewing him at conventions, and his kind of take on it. And then I've heard it from like Jim Shooter at the time. I heard it from Chris Claremont at the time. I've kind of heard interviews or people talk about this specific limited series, and I've seen people's reviews and I've seen some opinions on people in the comic book community on this. But when it came out, I didn't pick it up. I didn't get it right away. It wasn't until in '87 when I met my friend from Ruther Junior High, and he was big on it. He also had a T-shirt from Def Leppard. I don't know if I could call it up, but if anybody remembers this Def Leppard T-shirt where it was a character on it. I don't know if he was on a skateboard or he's just on the cover or on this it was for not. It might have been for Pyromania, but I think it was more for the Pour Some Sugar on Me, or in between those albums. What was the name of the album? Hysteria. But Def Leppard had a design, whether it was a T-shirt design or a single design for a single cover or whatnot, with a character that looked a lot like Longshot. And I just always wondered, was that supposed to be Longshot? And it kind of added to the coolness for me, I wanted it. Not that I was a huge Def Leppard fan, I just thought that was interesting. And he was reading it. I believe he might have picked it up firsthand from the spinner racks, or he had picked it up a couple issues in and then ended up going back. I was kind of fuzzy about his when he picked those up. I know he had them, and he had them before I did. So I was like, oh, I want to get these. So I looked for the issues, and I was at the Extravacon, which was at the American Legion Hall in downtown Royal Oak, kind of off, not right downtown, but kind of off of Rochester Road, which became Maine, I believe, in downtown Royal Oak, Michigan. And they had a Legion Hall there, American Legion Hall, and that's where they used to have the Extravacon. They had it at a couple other Legion Halls throughout that kind of Detroit area, but the Extravacon in Royal Oak was my first big convention. It wasn't big. It was my first comic book convention experience going, and I used to frequent it a lot. I went to it a lot, pretty much, I started going fall of '87, or even, it could even have been summer of '87. Yeah, I think it might have been summer of '87, and then, all throughout high school. They held it every other month. They used to give us a flyer. I was on the mailing list, and they'd give you this flyer that would come, and it would give you the dates of both the one in Royal Oak and the one, I think it was out in Middle Belt in Livonia, I think was the other one. I'd been to that one maybe twice in my life, but that wasn't the main one to go. It was kind of far out. It's easier just to go to the one in Royal Oak, so we used to go down there a lot. Sometimes my dad would come in with me. Primarily my dad would take me. And sometimes he'd come in because, like I said, he was into sports cards, and they had sports cards at con, and it was just comics. I mean, this is back in when conventions were awesome. It wasn't a big con. I mean, it was a Legion Hall. It was a pretty big room, but it wasn't enormous. It wasn't like, you're definitely not a San Diego Comic-Con, but it wasn't even like a Motor City Con, which was our big convention, or a New York City Comic-Con. It's a Legion Hall con. So they had a pretty big dealer room, but it wasn't huge. And it had that old smell, that old Legion Hall smell of cigar smoke and cigarette smoke and, and booze. Because that's usually what the Legionnaires were doing, when they weren't renting their hall out, is they're just smoking cigars and drinking and get away from their wives. So it had that tinge to it. It also had a tinge of French fries and fast food, because most of the vendors there, are always eating fast food while they're at their tables. And it smelled like comic book fans. And I would say it was 99.9% male. I think there may have been a wife of one of the other dealers, who might be there. You never ran into a girl collecting. It was pretty much all dudes. And it was mostly older dudes. I mean, we felt kind of like a minority there, being high school students. There were a few other teens here and there, but primarily it was older dudes who were there. And, they had various booths and stuff like that. So one time I was at this convention, and my dad was in there with me, and he was talking. He made some friends with some guys in a comic book shop called the Antique Paper, which is down in Oak Park, and that's kind of how he got his connections and stuff into kind of the collectible business. And he made friends with those guys, and he was talking to them. They had a booth set up, and I walked over to this other booth, and they had the Longshot series. They had all 1 through 5. They didn't have 6. And they wanted $10 for number 1, which is pretty pricey at the time. And I think all of it together for the first 5 issues was about just over 20 bucks, like $23, $24. And I went back to my dad, and I said, hey, Dad, I said, I kind of blew through all my money, because I didn't see it till after I blew through my money. And I only had like 20 bucks on me, maybe 30. And I said, Dad, I kind of spent all my money, but I didn't realize they had a series that I really wanted. And he's like, how much is it? I go, I need like 20, I think I had a few bucks in my pocket. But I said, I need like $23 or whatever. And he said, oh, all right. He says, well, I don't have any cash on me, because I gave you all my cash, and he had spent his cash. And I said, so he says, do you think they'll take a check? And he said, and the guy from Antique Paper said, oh, I know those guys. Yeah, they'll get. He goes, I'll tell them to accept your check. You've given me checks before, so that was like a weird thing back then. So my dad went over, said to the guy, he goes, hey, would you take a check for this? I said, my buddies at the Antique Paper, they'll vouch for me. And he goes, sure. So, he wrote him a check out for it, and then I got the first issue 1 through 5. I eventually got 6 at Dave's Comics in Royal Oak, like months later. Probably could even have been a year later. So, at the time, I mean, there was a lot of things you wanted, and it was funny because back then, as opposed to now, it seems like stuff comes out so slowly that you want, whether it's action figures or something like that. And it just seems like back then it was like there was so much out that you wanted that really what came down to is how quick you could get the money together. So every time you'd get together, 20 bucks, you'd go and you'd blow it, and you'd blow all of it on comics or something to that effect, toys as well too, something like that. So it was just funny. It was just a plethora of stuff to get. There's a lot of series that I ended up buying at the convention because I didn't get them off the spinner racks, like the Kraven's Last Hunt. I got Gang Wars for Amazing Spider-Man off spinner rack, but the Kraven's Last Hunt, I kind of fell short on my my Spider-Man buying at the time, and I remember same buddy said, "Hey, did you read Kraven's Last Hunt?" I said, "No." He goes, "Oh, it's awesome. You should get it." And then I ended up getting that, and then I kind of spanned over Spectacular Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man, and Web of. But I'm going to get to that. It's going to be a series all into itself. I'm kind of looking for a good copy of that. I had them all, and they went with the Purge, so I'm trying to get a graphic novel or something. I might got them all digital, but I'd like to have something. It kind of gives me a reason to make a video is when I get something and something comes. So that's kind of my background. Longshot. The biggest thing that appealed to me with Longshot was, he had blonde hair and he wore a lot of black. He was one of those characters. It's like, I was sort of getting into the female characters more and more, and not really, idolizing the dudes. But he was kind of one of those cool, just because he was like the guy you wanted to be. I mean, like Wolverine was like the cool guy you want, like the older uncle you wanted to hang out. And Longshot was the guy you wanted to be. You wanted to be good-looking, really lucky, have cool hair. It was the 80s. Black leather jacket, black leather pants and boots and 3 fingers. That was the thing. I always did the 3-finger thing. I used to always do that too as a kid. It's like, oh, look, I'll give you the Longshot Vulcan nerve pinch. But anyways, we'll get into it, and I'll kind of go through what appealed to me about Longshot. Again, this is kind of when this started to solidify my love of Arthur Adams, and I was aware of Arthur Adams before I got this. So, that's one of my selling points. I found out it was his first work. Another selling point, it had She-Hulk was in it. Obviously, you might have saw it from the back cover, and I'll get into it here. She-Hulk was in the back. Made an appearance in it, and drawn by Arthur Adams, and I thought he did an amazing job drawing She-Hulk. So let's just jump right into it here. I'll bring up issue 1. This is from a CBR. It's a CBR of essentially this, except I think it has a different cover. and these are probably pulled most likely from. I don't think it's pulled from that specifically. I think these are actually pulled from like some of the collected works where they kind of give pertinent side comics in between. I think it's in one of my. I think the whole series was in one of my Essential X-Men too. I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I think it is. So here's the cover, and as you can see right off the bat, what's cool about it is I love the logo, the font, or whatever the logo type, and I loved Arthur Adams' art. I loved the cool hair he had. It was just essentially like a mullet, but that was cool back then. But all of his background's real dense. And again, I keep talking about, like George Perez. I don't like how dense he draws. I do like how dense Arthur Adams draws. Just because his background's just, maybe it's the line work or whatever it is in there. It always had a little something extra. And then right off the bat, though, it's funny, I didn't notice this until I got a little older, but this is a terrible drawing. That's such a bad drawing. For the first splash page of #1, and you got Longshot running, and, again, I'm not going to get into the story, although I will make note that it's written by Ann Nesenti, and she was an editor at the time, edited X-Men, Friends. She's real big. She was in with Claremont and Simonson, Louise Simonson, and all those people, and she's the reason Arthur Adams got a job in the first place. Was she needed somebody to draw her comic, and nobody wanted to do it. Everybody turned her down, and she found this young kid, 18-year-old kid, who was tall, had long hair, and he was there to present a portfolio, and she looked at his stuff. This is going on her story, this is going on Arthur Adams' story, and said, oh, I love your stuff. I think she kind of liked him, too, and then, I just get that feeling, and then she ended up showing it to him, showing it to Shooter. Shooter kind of was like, all right, fine, if, you can't find anybody else to draw your book, if you want this kid to draw your book, let's do it. But then when he looked at his portfolio, he kind of told, he had to sit down with Adams and say, hey, your artwork looks great, but you got to draw comics a specific way, the Marvel way, the house style, for the most part. And I think what he meant, I don't think he meant don't draw his style. I think what he meant is, he gave him examples from like Kirby's Fantastic Four and stuff, and said there's a certain language that I don't think Adams might not have been adhering to at the time. That's just what from Shooter's point of view, when he talked about it, that's what he said. And it kind of corroborates that with Nesenti, and even Adams had mentioned it as well. But, yeah, so it was pretty good. I mean, as far as the artwork, I really like the artwork. Now, the writing, again, there's probably a reason why nobody wanted to do it, and nothing against Anne, but the story is very weird. It's not weird like it's weird, but it's like weird in like this doesn't make a lot of sense sometimes. It kind of seems like it leaves you hanging on a lot of like stuff that you're like, that's not really well explained. But, I was a younger kid, and a high school kid, I didn't really care so much about the story. And again, remember, I wasn't reading very well. So I thought it was fine enough. I just wanted to see the characters and like the art. I really didn't care much about the story. So all the people's, criticism of how the Longshot series, like, oh, it's terribly written. I had a conversation recently with a friend, and good art can save bad writing. I think bad writing can't save. Good art can save bad writing. I'm trying to think of how you word that. But if you've got bad art and bad writing, or the other way around, I can't remember. Oh, good writing can't save. Oh, sorry. Good writing can't save bad art. I find that's true. I used to think that the Watchmen series had bad. I used to think Dave Gibbons' art was bad. I thought V for Vendetta was terrible artwork. But everybody loves that story. I personally don't like it. I wasn't a huge. I was kind of like Watchmen back in the day, but I think I was just kind of jumping on the bandwagon, liking Watchmen because everybody liked Watchmen. I thought I wanted to be cool and in the secret, club and have a secret handshake. So I ended up liking Watchmen too, but I really didn't like it. It didn't appeal. I do not like the deconstructionist superhero thing. I don't like Alan Moore. I keep talking this. I don't like Frank Miller's writing much. I don't like his, his crappy art. I think his old art was pretty good. All these people they consider like the pioneers of the modern age of comics and the edginess, and they made more comics more adult, and more sophisticated. I think all those people are crap, personally. I don't like any of them. Again, I'm not trying to be a contrarian. I'm just saying, me, it just doesn't appeal to me. But let's get back to the story here. So, there's some wonky art in this, I gotta say. There's some great art in it too. A lot of things that catch my eye like that. I really like this. I think it's coming up. I think he goes into his pockets and he pulls out a bunch of stuff. There's this character. It's totally name totally slipped my. I haven't read this in a while either, but it doesn't. I can't remember the name of the. Not Quark, because Quark's the Billy Goat guy. I can't remember this thing's name. But he kind of befriends this creature from another dimension. I think is he from his dimension? I can't remember. Again, it's all fuzzy on the story. Like I said, not that that's a bad thing, because the story's not all that great. It's funny, I see this panel here now. I swear to God that McFarlane ripped this panel off and put Mary Jane there for a issue of Amazing Spider-Man. I think when it was like Venom, I don't know Venom, what he did to her, assaulted her or whatever, but Venom, there's an incident in that book, and I swear he got that from there. Maybe that, or I'm just imagining it, but it looks very similar. I remember the windmill thing. Yeah, this was pretty cool. I liked all, like I said, I liked the denseness. I liked all these creatures, these like animal-ish characters that were chasing them down. It's very Ninja Turtle-esque. Did I miss the page where he empties his pocket and he's got? I just think it's cool. He empties his pocket and he's got. Maybe it's longer after he's been on Earth for a while, or in our dimension. There's Spiral. I think that might even be the first appearance of Spiral, I believe, because I know she was created for this universe because she's like with Mojo. Okay, issue 2. I really liked the cover issue 2. I just thought that was cool. As a kid, I just that one grabbed it. I liked that a lot. Just like the way it's drawn. No, he empties his pocket and he's got an Eurythmics cassette tape, and I think he's got Dungeons and Dragons dice or something else in there. I can't remember exactly. So this character here, Ricochet Rita, is funny. I'm pretty sure, and I think it's been proven that she's a self-insert from Ann Innocenti, because she kind of looks like a young Ann Innocenti, dark hair. But I think Ricochet Rita is she's like the stunt woman, and she's a self-insert of Anne, and she kind of becomes the love interest, and then because they hire Longshot as a stuntman, I believe. Yeah, I think that's what happened. They hire him as a stuntman. They do all these stunts because he could do all this crazy. Because he had, has that probability manipulation, which comes from the role-playing game, and doesn't come from the role-playing game. That's just from, remember, they list his power as probability manipulation. So it's luck, basically. He's got his luck. So that's issue 2. That's funny. It's very Asgardian. He really likes to put that kind of headdress on. Let's see. Let's go to issue 3. Sometimes his face looks good. Sometimes his face is really kind of but like I said, Arthur Adams was the one that kind of did more of these cartoony characters, which I liked. I mean, that's kind of a good face there. A little odd looking, but he always did this really stark bone Well, it kind of went down here too, which is kind of weird. That's the one where I remember. I always think of Arthur Adams as that, how he's showing his teeth, lips apart, with a big smile on his face, with his eyes shut. I also used to always equate Longshot with Robin Zander from Cheap Trick. I mean, they're both blonde-haired guys. Obviously, Robin Zander's not as tall as Longshot, but always because Robin Zander kind of just had that smiley look with his blonde hair, and I kind of made that association. I think Cheap Trick just came out with the Lap of Luxury album that had the flame on it, and so it was kind of fresh at the time, and I kind of equate, like I said, the Def Leppard, whatever image, the T-shirt, and the I think the guy, I can't remember his name is on top of my head, the lead singer of Def Leppard, I think he's wearing the T-shirt in the Pour Some Sugar on Me video, if I'm not mistaken. So if you've seen that video, you'll see that shirt. But again, that shirt, Robin Zander, you know, I had blonde hair at the time, and I was trying to grow it out long. I kind of had a mullet weird thing for a while. I also tried to make myself have Wolverine hair for a while. I mean, people in high school thought I was a complete lunatic. And probably rightfully so. You know, you're a teenager. You do weird things. Let's see. I still haven't come across him. Oh, he's got diamonds. Is this where he empties his pocket? Okay. Ignore that part. Let's get on to She-Hulk. So, again, she's a little, now that I look at her, she's really thin and very lanky here, you know, very small butt on her too. But, this drawing aside, I really like the way he drew She-Hulk. You know, I just like she's visually appealing. You know, she's a hot chick. She's really tall. She's got lots of muscles. She's green, and specifically like that chartreuse green, the same green that's like Rogue's costume. And I really like that green. So all that stuff plays into why she appeals to me. You know, and again, keep harping on the MCU. You know, when they put She-Hulk in the TV show, I mean, the green I think was a little too dark. It wasn't too dark, but it was more, that green was more like an apple green from like, and that was more like a Avengers-esque green, which, you know, kind of makes sense. But I like the more chartreuse She-Hulk, the more yellowy green, and I thought that was better. I would like to have seen She-Hulk in the show a little lighter. I think if they made her lighter too, it probably would have helped the CG, made it look a little better. But no, just it would have made her more interesting. Her skin would have popped more. And I love the headband. Love 80. Like I said, I love the leg warmers. Love the leg warmers. I love that 80s look. I mean, I might not have liked it so much back then, but for some reason it just really appeals to me now. Maybe it's probably nostalgia. But I loved this drawing here. I thought her legs and stuff looked better in this one. Everybody kind of drew girls, you know, with kind of not a flat butt, but more, you know, they didn't draw them with the giant badonkadonk like, you know, a lot of women in like pop culture have now, and that's obviously because of the influence of hip-hop and hip-hop culture. You know, every song now is about butts, so, and I'm just being facetious, but I'm just saying, you know, you get my point. It wasn't a thing so much in the 80s. You know, 80s was more about like fake boobs and, you know, blondes with fake boobs. It wasn't really, you know, the lower half was in vogue back then. It was for me, but, you know, I was kind of a weirdo, so still am a weirdo. Oh yeah, there's Mojo. Mojo shows up, and then we got Spiral there. And then again, back to, I love this. I love the stance of her. Like I said, I really like how Arthur Adams kind of does that standing sideways stance with like the hips and the hands and everything. Then she whacks him into the tree. I did a little parody on this on my in my webcomic. People probably saw it. It's just kind of homage to this specific comic and this scene. But there's Ricochet. Rita shows up. How are we doing on time? At 29 minutes. Okay. So, sorry, I almost had to sneeze there. I still wish I could remember that character's name. I'm just kind of scanning for it. It's just, It totally is escaped me. It's just weird. It's like when I couldn't remember the name Jack Nicholson one time. Somebody's asked me, like, hey, who's going to be in that Batman movie? I'm like, oh, I can't remember his name. How could you forget Jack Nicholson's name? I couldn't remember Jack Nicholson's name. It happens to me once in a while. For as much useless information is in my head and how much, junk I got crammed in there, for some reason, some really basic things end up falling out, and I forget. As long as I just don't forget to breathe, forget to, wake up. But, let's see here. I'm just trying to say, it's not a good drawing there. It's almost a Rob Liefeld drawing there. And obviously, Liefeld took a lot. Most of those image guys all took their inspiration from Adams. I mean, Adams was the first to do that. And, I think Silvestri kind of had his own thing, although his stuff was dipping in those waters. Actually, this entire comic is inked by Willis Portacia, who obviously went on with those image guys. So, I think... Oh, there it is. So, yeah, no, it's not in his pocket. It goes through his little messenger bag, and he pulls out all the stuff. And there's D&D dice, a Gumby. I remember the Gumby. I think this is supposed to be Aqua Fresh toothpaste, an X-Acto knife. It's just, there was a Crow-Year Micronaut, and then the Eurythmics album. I just thought that was so cool as a kid. I was like, oh, I love that panel. When he pulls out his stuff, and he's got that Eurythmics tape and the D&D dice, and then, he's got a Micronaut. He's got a bunch of random crap in his bag. I just thought that was so cool. Oh yeah, the big ship. Oh yeah, that's right. They strapped Nascenti, or not? There you go. Strapped Ricochet Rita to the front of it. He always looked kind of weird with that headband, and it's like his hair got shorter or something. A nice. I like that silhouette framing that panel. It looks nice. The color doesn't do it a lot of justice, but this is a little wonky drawing, but I think just the concept of that looks nice. Yeah, he had a tendency, even like little weird creatures like this, if they had like a female form, he really had a tendency to really make them appealing looking. It's almost like she's got a storm mohawk there. Or actually, it almost looks like one of the characters from the Savage Land. He drew those people, those indigenous people, the Savage Lands, and he drew the girls had like the mohawk. He really made that look on one of the girls in there really attractive. I like that look. It's probably off-putting for some people, but I really liked it. A lot of really crazy, just really over-the-top crazy creatures. This guy's really interesting looking. Looks very 80s. Looks very almost like a Labyrinth kind of, kind of Gwildor-y from from the He-Man movie with Lundgren. I just noticed those little details in there. And that's a nice 2-page spread with that character. I can't remember his name. Is it up there? It'll come to me after I finish the video, of course. The hell was his name? It's gonna drive me crazy. Did Quark even show up yet? Oh, there's Quark right there. Okay, yeah, I liked Quark. I thought Quark was a cool character, like this kind of Billy Goat looking, guy from that other dimension. I thought he's neat. I really liked Quark. I thought that was kind of a cool name too. Okay, and then there's issue 6. So, like I said, I got this one at Dave's Comics to finish the set. I think I paid $6.75 for it. I think it was a double issue. It's a giant size issue. I think it was $2.25. I want to say, or $2.50 on the newsstand. So paying $6.50 for it, wasn't that much over newsstand. I mean, sure, yeah, it was double the amount or over double the amount. But I mean, it was weird. That was the time when, like, if you spent over $5 on one comic, that was like a big thing because, like, with $5, especially you're taking back pop bottles and stuff to get stuff, or mowing lawns and stuff. $5 went a long way. I mean, you get it. Like I said, I keep saying, you get an action figure, a G.I. Joe, you could get a candy bar, a pop. You get a lot of things for $5. You can get a bunch of comics. 75-cent comics. You could get what? How many? 4, 5, and and have a quarter left over. So when you spend over $5 on one comic, it was kind of like, ooh, it kind of hurt to do that. Of course, that's not the case today. I mean, you spend they cost $5 now, $4.99 a comic. Yeah, and then it goes into this last issue here. I like Spiral a lot. She's appealing. I really love the big boots on her. I always had a big thing for those big fur muckaluck boots. I really like that. And then of course with the extra arms made her really cool looking. Had the cool like samurai helmet. Yeah, I mean a lot of this comic visually appealed to me quite a bit. Ooh, her eyes look weird there. But oof, yeah, some weird. I don't know, maybe I also heard that it took him a year to do issue 1. So he must have started way back in like 83, 84. It took a long time for him to get this out, and that was kind of like they're like, oh, I don't know about this guy. It takes way too long, and Arthur Adams has been always notoriously slow, and obviously because he takes a lot of time, puts a lot of stuff in there. But you know, there's guys now that can do tons of detail, but they do it fast. So I don't know. I kind of thought that was kind of a weird thing. I always thought that was weird, that dog with the head on backwards, or cracked neck, or whatever happened to it. I can't remember. Quirks there. Yeah, remember Dr. Strange showing up. Remember the hats and the backpacks. Just looking. I think it pretty much just wraps itself up here. I remember this cool looking, like mechanical looking horse thing. I thought that was cool. It had the Colossus type skin. Anything with the Colossus skin, like his legs. I just love the Colossus skin. I always called it the Colossus skin. Even like Box had that look too. I always just thought that looked so cool. It was like that cybernetic kind of cyber look. You know, supposed to be all chrome and everything. I always thought that was really cool. I think that they took it a little too far in the 90s, especially the Image guys. They obviously like that too, but they did it to death. I like it a little more subtle than that. Like on this guy's legs, or you know, this horse thing showing up. I think that's cool. But again, doing it to death, you know, it's kind of off-putting. Kind of, you know, takes away from it. I think you do anything, you overbake anything, it's kind of bad. Oh, I remember I used to draw this drawing a lot. I used to draw it not like a hologram-ish. I used to draw it kind of, you know, as a solid form. Just because I liked, you know, thought she looked good there. He looks good. It's got the face more that I like. This kind of looked like the Tim Zahn commission I did, or I had Tim Zahn commission. I commissioned Tim Zahn to draw this back when I was in high school. And he kind of did this Longshot, but he made him way too thick. Like you can tell, he's pretty thin here. And I mean, he's big. He's got a big chest. He's probably 6 foot, 6'2" maybe. But he's kind of lengthy. You know, he's kind of lithe. And Zahn drew him like he was like, you know, a linebacker for NFL. It's just like he's a little too thick. So yeah, so that's that. I'm going to show you real quick. I think I have it pulled up here somewhere. Oh yeah, I got these images off of the Heritage Auction. As you can see it down there. These are the. I'd love to see what those went. I guess they're still up for auction. They haven't sold yet because usually they say sold. I'm just curious to what this and the back cover of this graphic novel are selling for. I mean, it's way out of my league, but I would love to own them. That would be great. I mean, that would be pretty amazing to own those. But you know, like probably 10 grand, 15 grand a piece, most likely. Probably even more than that. You know, can't afford anything like that. I just draw it myself. You know, just draw it myself. Yeah. So that was it's the original art for the front cover, you know, of the book here. And of course, I'll show you the guy. He's got the back. Sorry, that's my Return of the Jedi album you guys saw earlier. That's the artwork for the back. So, okay, so the reason I really like this back cover, of course, is not only does he draw a great She-Hulk, and I really like her in this, although I noticed that her right thigh, because of the angle, looks so much thicker than her left thigh. But regardless, I really like this She-Hulk drawing a lot. I like the way he drew, you know, I like the way he draws the detail in the legs, the muscles, more so than John Byrne. I think John Byrne does a great She-Hulk, obviously, but I just thought this appealed to me more. And of course, the other reason why I love it is she's got the Fantastic Four costume on, which is my favorite She-Hulk, costume. I just love it. And the purple one's fine, even the white and purple one, or the newer one's fine. But just those all white boots, all white gloves, the white belt, and the white neck piece, and then the Fantastic Four with the blue against that chartreuse green. I love that. It's so appealing to me. I know I sound kind of weird about that, but I'm an artist, so things like that, it kind of draws me in with that stuff. All right, so let's wrap this up. We're at 40 minutes now. There's this color of the cover here. Instead of me holding it up, that's the cover here, but you can see that there. I really like that. Really like that a lot. I mean, the rest of the cover's fine too. I mean, I think Ricochet Rita looked cool. Quark looks cool. Yeah, that's right, Spider-Man, because he was in there when he was chasing She-Hulk down. Or I can't remember what they're doing. Again, I can't remember what was going on in that scene. It's weird. Some of the stuff, I mean, it's like I remember it pretty fresh after I read it. That's why I try to read the things before I talk about them. But I've only got so much time, and I'm reading that Ninja Turtles book right now, so I don't like to. I try to also not. I used to do that where I tried to read like 3 or 4 different, books that all had like this one with a bookmark in. I'll have the Ninja Turtles. I'll have the Asgard Warriors, or I'll have the X Mutants comics, and I'll be reading them all in various, stages. And it's too much at once. I've got to focus. I got to focus on one book, finish it, go to the next one. One book, focus, finish it, the next one. So that's what I've been doing with that. Or sorry, for my reading. So I haven't got around to this one again. The story's not really that great either. So it's kind of. Sometimes I'm hesitant to read it. I'll look at it and go, oh, I should read that Longshot again. And sometimes I'll look through like the first issue and I'll just go like, oh god, I remember it was kind of a slog to read. So it's just like, sometimes it turns me off. Sorry, I'm gonna sneeze again. The weather must be, I don't know, I don't really have allergies, but the weather's weird out there. It's kind of giving me some kind of pressure in my head. It's not even really that warm out. Alright, so the X-Men, the Longshot miniseries. Like I said, so the things to remember, my takeaways on this stuff is I loved it. It was very inspirational to me as a kid. Kind of one of the things that solidified my love of Arthur Adams, especially his early work. I'm not a huge fan of his newer stuff. I've seen him draw a lot of these characters that he drew really well back in the 80s. He doesn't really draw that well today. He makes them way too cartoony. It's almost like he's parodying himself. It's almost like, people like J. Scott Campbell and stuff who were influenced by Adams, but then they added a more cartoony style. It's almost like Adams was looking at other people who he influenced and then parodying them. That's what it feels like. I'm not saying that's what's happening, but just I get that impression. Wow, this is $17.95 back then, huh? I bought it at again, I can't remember where I got this. As far as the graphic novel, I told you the story about the comic, but graphic novel, I know I had it when it came out. I got it right. It's very similar time to the Asgardian Wars. Yeah, I can't remember. Either a convention, one of the comic shops, maybe a bookstore. I can't remember where I got this one exactly. Yeah, so I loved it. I still, that's one of that She-Hulk drawing right there is one of the drawings that solidified my love of She-Hulk and the Fantastic Four costume. As well as her being in the Fantastic Four at the time. Again, this is also pre Asgardian War, so you got to think, as far as the X-Men timeline, you had the Mutant Massacre. Right after that, you had pretty much this, because after this limited series, that's when the Mojoverse and stuff started appearing in the X-Men comics, and then of course Longshot, which I thought was so cool as a kid, who eventually joins the X-Men, and he's part of that Down Under, my favorite team, the Down Under team. So you had him along there with Rogue and everything. I just love that. And then the the Asgardian Wars was right around the same time, and then we kind of moved into Fall of the Mutants. And then when they were hiding out in Australia down under, and using Gateway to kind of travel around, and then which ended up leading into the Genosha thing, which was pretty brief, but that was cool. I really loved that cover. I'll go get more on that later. And then into into Inferno. Yeah, and then of course by '89, Sensational She-Hulk had come out. John Byrne doing that. So, like I said, it was a toss-up then. Who I liked more? Did I like She-Hulk more? Or did I like Rogue more? Who was my comic book girlfriend more? And obviously, when you find out, which everybody should know by now, what happens to Rogue, and she comes back eventually. But at the time, and I'll get into that specific issue because that's that was such a heartbreaking moment for me, and I remember it vividly, like it was yesterday, and where exactly what I was doing. I can even smell the break room at the A&W restaurant. I could smell the root beer and the curly fries, coily fries, as the manager used to call them. I could smell it. I could just smell it right now, thinking about that comic. Yeah, so this was one of those ones. It's kind of a staple of my collection. Pull myself back up here. So yeah, so the Longshot series, that's the graphic novel, trade paperback, whatever you want to call it, collects the limited series, or you can, like I said, you can find it. It's been reprinted a lot of times, or go track down the issues, I highly recommend them, even though the story is not that great. I'm just warning you now, if you haven't read it. And to those people who bag on the story, they've got some, there's some credence into what they say. I don't agree with that 100%. And again, I don't love it for its story. So, all right, as far as tomorrow, I'm not sure what I'm going to get into. Is it the last day, or should be the last day? Because this was episode 29, right? So, episode 30 tomorrow. Wow, 30 episodes. That's 5 a week. It's been 6 weeks already since I started. That's crazy. Yeah, I'll probably, like I said, I keep saying this, I want to kind of stagger them out as far as I'm doing comic books, toys, whatever. Eventually I'm gonna start putting music into it, but I'm not gonna really go crazy with the music. It's just a certain music, that's kind of pivotal to that time period, I'm already mentioned the Def Leppard thing, connection there. There's certain connections of things that really formed my, my love of art, my love of, all that stuff. Just the creative, whatever you call it, your creative self. Yeah, a lot of that stuff just kind of appeals to me, and obviously, back in the day, like I said, I'm getting in the process of getting a new turntable. My old turntable that I had in my room there in the trailer, I'd sat there and I was drawing this stuff. When I was drawing this stuff, I had a stack of records that I would put on the, because it was an automatic record player, and I'd put them all on the A sides, and I'd drop 6 records, boom, I'd drop one after another, and I didn't have to touch the needle, and it would play through all 6 records A sides, and then when I was done, I'd flip them over, and I'd play all the B sides, I'd go through 6 records like that in an afternoon while I was drawing. Especially when you get into like the inking. It's a very, it's almost like mowing the lawn. It's kind of you have to think, but you can kind of turn your brain off a little bit, and you can let in other sounds or other distractions too. It's just funny nowadays. As much as I love music, I really can't. I can do it when I'm inking, and I can do it when I'm coloring. But when I'm writing a comic or working off a script and trying to especially laying out comics and penciling, it's got to be absolute quiet. I cannot. That's the thing. That's why I can't usually. So I try to get that stuff done when my son's not here, because I need absolute quiet and I don't want any distractions. And it's so easy for me to get distracted with stuff. I try to limit my my phone and my tablet, my Discord, and stuff like that, and people bothering me or emails and stuff. It's like I'll get to it So if you email me, and I don't get back to you right away, I'm probably busy. I mean, I'm either not home, which, even then I can use my phone, but I'm busy. But I'll get back to everybody's questions. Comments, you want to leave comments here. And of course, that reminds me, leave comments. Like if you like the stuff, and subscribe, helps my numbers go up. And, I can help boost the algorithm there to kind of get my site going. Like I said, if I can get monetized, I'm already pretty close to being able to do live chats, and I'll do live chats with people. I'll get people on here and we'll do a live chat and we'll record it and throw it up on YouTube. You guys want to be on it? Stuff like that. I have to figure out how to do everything, but I'll do that when it comes time. But like I said, yeah, I'll make the site better. I can invest some money and a little more time into it if it's bringing in some revenue. So, right now it's pretty raw. And again, I kind of like it raw. Personally, me, you guys might not, but I do. I kind of like this kind of setup. It's just kind of, it's me at my workstation. I mean, you're getting me 100%. You're not getting me, but once in a while I wash my hair and I, put a clean shirt on, but, maybe, clean my skin up a little bit here, but you're getting me pretty raw. And this is just me sitting at my table. So, if you like that aspect, then, business as usual, won't upset the status quo. But, if everybody wants a little bit more production and stuff, and of course, obviously, if I start making money, I can add some more stuff to make it more extra disposable income, add some more stuff to the collection. I can talk about it online, make more videos. So, kind of cyclical thing. So, all right, before I keep going on forever, it's after 50 minutes. So, let me stop this one, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.